once COVID hit, cybersecurity threats became unparamounted. We've never seen anything like this before in this industry. So so we're going to start now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the floor over to Kyle. He's going to be doing the presentation, and he's going to do a quick 10-minute presentation, and then I'm going to go into the cybersecurity threats and how to deal with cybersecurity and how to prevent it from getting into your business and destroying your network. So can everybody see the screen? Okay, let me. Okay. All right.
All right. Well, as Roland said, my name is Kyle Linder. I'm a commercial insurance specialist. I actually work with State Farm. I'm a captive agent with them. I actually have two agencies, one in Katy, Texas, and one in Houston, kind of near Jersey Village. We're able to provide coverage for pretty much the entire state. Just a little quick background. I started in the industry over 18 years ago, so I'm kind of dating myself here, I guess. Started in St. Louis, moved down here in 2009 to open up my first agency. Since then, I've actually completed a few financial designations. One is the Financial Specialist designation, and the other is the Life Underwriting Training Council Fellow designation. These are through the American College and sponsored by NAPA, which is the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Really what I specialize is in commercial insurance, general liability, and then key man insurance coverage. Like I mentioned before, I am a member of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Danielle will probably relate to this, kind of like the Bar Association. They protect our rights plus our clients' rights for anything that could legislatively be negative to the industry or to our clients. Really, our goal is to help our business owners protect their businesses, from the risks of everyday life and strive for financial independence. That's always seems to be a key for a lot of business owners, is that we want to start a business, we want to grow that business to be self-sustainable, so we have that financial independence. This is one slide I always like to touch on because we sometimes start businesses and we forget exactly where we're at in that business life cycle. And a lot of people, they start off a business, they really don't take that time. They look back and say, hey, where am I now at? Am I still at the startup stage? Am I at the growth stage? Am I a mature company? And hey, how am I going to transfer that business? So this is just a quick slide of some things that to consider as your business does go through these stages. I'll have Roland really tackle this one later on. I just put this in here. These are the ones that we're seeing in the insurance industry. And one of the key features is there's a lot of business owners that believe that their general liability on their policy actually provides them protection for these ransomwares, malware, phishing, denial of service. And actually it's denied. It's actually a clause in the contract on business policies that we do not provide general liability coverage.
So,
yes.
So it's really important, you can do whatever you can to stop the guys from coming in, and but if you were to be compromised, if you don't have that coverage in place, it's going to cost a lot of money, as we'll cover shortly.
Yeah, so the fees that are associated with it, if there's legal fees, ransomware fees, anything like that, it's not covered under general liability, unfortunately. It's a clause, it's excluded. So many industries have been impacted, and we've seen this really double and triple. And like Roland said, this is actually the healthcare industry and just the impact that it's had over just one industry. So global average is $3.86 million. The average cost is around $150,000. Roland will really get into this in greater detail, but a breach life cycle under 200 days is $1 million. And then when we see that over a lifetime, over 200 days. 39% of the costs incurred more than a year after the data breach. So it's not all up front. We're seeing this later down the road that there's aftermath that is occurring that we're sometimes not aware of on these data breaches. And then in 2020, the country with the highest average total cost of data breaches was the United States at $8.6 million. So that's what we're really trying to deter with educating our business owners on data breach coverage and also identity restoration. I'll touch on those 2 points today. A mega breach of $1 million to 10 million records has an average total cost to the healthcare industry of $50 million, a growth of 22% from 2018.
And what I'm also going to cover is that some people say, oh, these are only happening to big companies. Well, the bad guys who are pretty much all over the world at the moment are targeting America, and they're actually targeting small businesses because they're easier to get into.
Correct. Yeah, they don't have they need rolling, right? And your expertise there. So this is an example of an insurance policy that provides data compromise coverage. So the data compromise liability limit is $50,000. And it also includes identity restoration. And I'll cover that on my next slide. These services, and it's not limited to these, I kind of picked out the key ones that I've seen used by business owners, is the legal review of the facts and advice regarding a course of action. So as these happen, many people don't, what do I do? What are the next steps? What am I properly supposed to handle for my clients? Well, part of the policy actually provides that information. Hey, this is the course of action from a legal company to move forward to rectify the situation. Forensic review, if needed, to determine the nature and the extent of the breach. So again, we sometimes see these breaches happen, but later down the road, we're actually seeing some aftermath. So with this coverage in place, that could deter later down the road. We're seeing people going, oh gosh, this also happened, right? Notification to individuals affected by the breach, right? So this is very key, is those that are affected, you do have to notify them. You have a legal obligation to do this. So this will provide that advice, the format of how you should contact your clients.
The first thing the bad guys are going to do is
they're going
to exploit that data.
Yeah, they need to know. You need to inform them, because then the extent of the liability can just go even further. So services to individuals affected by the breach, so informational materials, toll-free helpline. Will also provide creditor monitoring upon enrollment and identity restoration case management. So we'll help them through that process. The identity restoration, this is kind of key because we see this actually happening to small businesses, but it's also happening to the business owner and executives. So that's why our identity restoration coverages provides not just to the clients that you serve, but it also protects the business owners. I'm personally right now going through this, and I found out a very interesting fact. Mandy, actually Roland's wife, brought this to my attention, that if you have an ACH draft come out of your account for a data breach, they compromised your bank account, the bank is not completely responsible to actually cover those funds. That's a very interesting fact. Mandy sent an email to me a few weeks ago. I don't know if she knew I was going through this, but it's been nice that I could just actually hand all this over to the claims department and let them handle everything. And it was the owner being compromised, but also covers chief executive officers. We'll also do personal case management services and any expense reimbursement. So they asked me if I had any additional expenses out of pocket, time, things like that. You could take it a little further. Like I've seen this in claims before where they take it a little too far. I was like, no, it's okay. They just helped me out with the basics. So these are the types of commercial insurance. I always like to review this. There's a few on here that most people overlook. One, obviously, general liability. Everybody, hey, I need to make sure I'm lawsuit protected, right? Property insurance. One that sometimes is overlooked is loss of income. So loss of income is a huge one. If we lose a key man insurance policies listed there below. Those are very important to sustain certain businesses. Workers' comp. I'm not sure that Danielle, she said she's in family law, but this is one, if you ever talk to a law firm about workers' comp, if you don't carry it and you actually exclude, because the state does allow you to exclude workers' comp, if you do, you are still liable for the injuries at a job site or at your office. That's a very, very key thing, a liability that's sometimes overlooked. Errors and omissions, these are for the professional CPAs. We're looking at real estate agents, title companies, anything that possibly could make an error. Errors and omissions coverage provides coverage in case if you're ever sued by a client that you work for. My big one is key man insurance. Key man insurance, this is the one that I think is really overlooked by many businesses. Make sure you look at, hey, what does it take to replace Kyle at the office? What was the training? What's all that Kyle does for me? Because that's huge. I've seen businesses really suffer for a few years of losing a key person in their company. Employers practices liability. This is one also overlooked. This actually provides coverage in case if I feel like I was wrongfully terminated, and it could be due to race, creed, color, ethnicity. It could be anything. But this provides that again, that hey, I don't want to take on this expense. I want to pass this on to the insurance company. Very inexpensive policies, very important policies. This is key to a company like Roland's business. Technology services E&O insurance, so errors and omissions as well. And then inland marine insurance. Those are more for my contractors. Here's a few things you can do. So as we go through our life cycle, make sure you're customizing your business insurance. A few things that definitely played a big part was utility interruption, loss of income. So when you have a direct physical loss to a building or a shopping center or office that you are a tenant of or that you own, you do have loss of income in most cases. But if they have a freeze, like we just recently had, we actually have utility interruption loss of income. So a lot of my clients that had business insurance with me were unaware of this. And when I contacted them, they were thrilled that they could continue to pay their employees. Backup of a sewer drain, that's a very common one that's overlooked, but happens quite often in businesses, especially strip malls. Dependent property contingent loss of income, employee dishonesty. You have garage keepers insurance, comprehensive and collision. Building ordinance or law, so if the law changes and there is a loss to your business, this will actually provide coverage for additional expenses that, upgrading utilities, moving from copper to PVC or flex tube, that's a good example. And then also spoilage coverages for those industries like florists and restaurants, things that could have a spoilage issue. This is one thing as business owners I would recommend. I would recommend at least once per year that you're doing a business assessment. I've seen, companies that have gone through business assessments, and I've seen their companies really catapult 3, 4, 5 years later because they're taking this annual review and we're sitting down with them and we're talking, these key questions, how long have you owned your business? How many employees do you have? Where do you see your employees in the next few years? And, but always complete a business assessment. Very, very important. Also, I've seen this, the very last one, do you have equipment that is considered high value equipment? So as a startup business, sometimes we start a business, we're just getting by with, the regular printer, then we end up buying the, $10,000, $15,000 printer that does everything for us. So that would be my recommendation for your business insurance, is sit down each year with your agent or your company and complete just the business assessment questionnaire. So
Kyle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the questions at the end. So
yeah.
if we've got anybody who wants to ask a question, you can actually post them in the Q&A. And what we're going to do is we're going to answer all the questions at the end of it. So if you've got any questions at this point for Kyle, just put them in the Q&A at the bottom. They'll pop up and Kyle and I will address those.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Roland.
Thanks, Kyle. So what we're going to go through today is 12 essential basics that every business owner should know to protect themselves in today's environment. Just a little bit of history about us. You know, Mandy and I started the company back in '94 in Zimbabwe, and we grew it to one of the largest in the country. And in 2003, we made the move to Katy. And in the past 18 years, we've become a well-known name in the community. And we've definitely established ourselves as one of the largest IT firms in the Katy area. This is some of our team. We do everything from IT support for businesses, cybersecurity. We monitor and maintain people's networks, but we also do have the storefront if you wanted to come in and simply pick up a new computer or a laptop, or you needed a new printer. So let's have a look at it. Well, ransomware attacks have definitely been on the increase, and the average ransom demand in 2020 was $312,000. In addition to that, the cost of downtime amounted to $141,000. What does that mean? As of January 2021, the average days that a company was down after a ransomware attack was 18 days. That's 18 days of lost business, 18 days that you're pretty much running in the dark sometimes. And that can be catastrophic. In fact, 60% of small businesses actually fold within 6 months. If you got hit by a major ransomware attack, you didn't have your backups, you weren't able to recover, 60% now have actually collapsed after being hit with ransomware. So obviously having the insurances places is great in that case. That would cover you for those losses. But obviously what we want to do from our side is making sure that that doesn't happen. And it's a company's reputation is being affected now because of the way that they're not just holding you to ransom, they're actually publishing that data on the dark web. So what exactly is ransomware? Well, ransomware is a type of malware that infects your machine and it encrypts your data, and it makes it that none of your data is accessible or usable, and they're going to hold you to ransom. Normally they're going to hit you, they're going to charge you Bitcoins. If you pay the ransom, you may get your data, but there's no guarantees because you're dealing with an unknown entity and you're paying them with untraceable currency. And of course, the recent events now have seen an increase in double extortion, where they're saying, okay, pay us to get your data. Companies have been going, well, I'm going to recover from my backup. They recover from their backup, and the extortionists go, well, we're now going to, if you don't pay us, we're going to publish this information on the dark web. So you definitely get hit with a double whammy, and you want to make sure it doesn't happen. So how does it get spread? Well, simple. You're clicking on a link or clicking on an attachment. And in the past, they used to make it so that it was an executable. So it would have a .exe or it would be a zipped file. And people got wise to that. So they've now started embedding it into PDFs, spreadsheets, and Word documents. So you'll get something that might say, oh, this invoice has not been paid. Here's a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet. One of your employees opens that spreadsheet and the malware is embedded as a script into that actual document. So just by opening that document, wham, you start getting infected. So how do you prevent this from going on? Well, the first step is employee training. And some people might say, well, is that really, the first step? But I promise you, most cyber attacks have occurred because employees have not been on the lookout. So you really need to train your employees, have a look for what looks suspicious. If it's got an attachment, if there's a link in the document and you were not expecting it from that person, you've got to treat it with suspicion and then reacting quickly for your employees to know, wow, if something happens, what should I do? So training them to look out for scam emails and doing tests. One of the things we offer to our clients is to send out test scam emails. And what that does is it alerts the business owner to who's clicking on the emails that we've sent out, and just so that we can put the training in place to make sure that employees know what to look out for. And if they suspect anything, the next biggest thing is to rapid response. Ransomware spreads like wildfire. We've had people on their networks, people using Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive, and they're all syncing files. Or it may be on a network with a server. One employee gets it, and it spreads to each machine, spreads to the server, spreads to their backups. We've seen it infect 20 computers, the server and the backups within a matter of hours. So the first thing to do is training your employees when they see something out of the ordinary to alert your IT team and say, this doesn't look right. And the first thing that you want to do is disconnect the computer from the network, shut it down, and stop that ransomware from spreading not only within that machine, but also to other computers that are on the network. So the next step from that, firewalls and having open ports on your firewalls. Now, a lot of businesses will have a Comcast or an AT&T modem, and they don't have that additional firewall. And in today's environment, you've got to have a actual hardware firewall, sonic wall, Fortinet, something like that has got to be in place to actually help prevent those emails and the links and people being able to hack your system. The more security walls that we can put in place is essential, and that's going to be with a true hardware firewall. And your subscription's got to be up to date. We've walked into some companies and they've got a firewall that is 3 or 4 years old and it's never had an active subscription. Well, that's kind of like having an antivirus without having the active subscription to your antivirus. You're actually going to be vulnerable because the patching is not being done on the back end. And then the next biggest mistake that we see happen is open ports. Especially during the COVID era, people have needed to open ports to allow the employees to remote in from the outside. Well, when you open your ports, that's going to make you vulnerable. So you really want to be able to go through and make sure, do we have open ports, or can we shut them down? The fourth thing is antivirus and anti-malware. This is pretty much a given. Even though this is not going to give you full protection, you've got to have antivirus and anti-malware subscription up to date. It's going to stop a lot of things from coming in. However, once ransomware has taken control of your system, it pretty much overrides your antivirus. So some people think, well, I've got an antivirus and I've got a firewall, I'm safe. And you can no longer rely on just having an antivirus and a firewall. So the next thing that you want to put in place is having multi-factor authentication. So this is a couple of things. If you log in from your email from home, most people these days are using Office 365. You've got an email, you've got a password. If you've clicked on an attachment at some point and your email and password has been compromised, then the bad guys sometimes are not doing anything malicious. They're just sitting there watching. The way to stop them from being able to access from your emails remotely are going to be to enable two-factor authentication, which means that if somebody logs in from a different computer, it's going to send you a code to your cell phone, and that's going to alert you, hey, if that wasn't you, somebody else is trying to log in. The same thing with your bank accounts. Pretty much every website that you go to that's got sensitive information, you should have two-factor authentication, which means that it's going to send something through to your cell phone to give you that authorization. By putting that in place, it's going to block a tremendous amount of hacking that's going on. And then going with email security. You know, if you've got the basic Office 365, or you've got a Gmail or a Yahoo, you don't have email security. what you want to do is that you want to increase the level of your security on your email package, so that that security is eliminating a lot of the scams from coming in. It's going to block most of the ransomware, most of the malware that could come into your system is already taken care of. If you can eliminate that from coming into your employees' email boxes, you're going to be a lot more secure. And now one of the biggest things that we've seen come about in the last year is what we call zero trust policy-driven security. Well, what does that mean? Effectively, it locks down the system and it says, we're going to whitelist all the good known programs. So we use a program called Threat Locker. There are others out there, but basically any whitelisting program will say, you go to all of your computers that are on your network, you look at the known good programs, and anything else is going to be completely blocked, which means that if somebody clicks on a link, clicks on an attachment by mistake, you're not relying on your antivirus to try and eliminate that. Zero trust means zero trust. It's physically going to block it completely from running. If you can stop anything from running, there's no way that you can get infected. It also adds additional security of stopping people from copying information to flash drives and taking that information when they leave the company. How does that work? If you're running and you clicked on a link, it would come through and say, hey, this information, this is an executable program, this is something that's trying to install. It stops it from running. We can now put you into learning mode if it's a legitimate program, and install that program or install that printer and then lock it down again. But the bad guys are pretty much 100% eliminated from coming in. The next thing with that zero trust comes to ring fencing. And what does ring fencing mean? Well, we discussed in the last slide how we want to have zero trust and you whitelist your programs. If you've only got whitelisted programs and that program gets compromised. So there were some programs at the beginning of COVID like Zoom that got compromised. And what ring fencing does, it says, okay, these are known good programs, but if it tries to do something out of the ordinary and it tries to run any executable, it's going to stop it from running. So it's a combination of, one, you whitelist, block everything out. Two, if the whitelisted programs try to do anything out of the ordinary, it's going to prevent it from running. So that way you've got the system completely locked down. You're not going to get infected. Coming up to number 9, I cannot stress this enough. Backup, backup, backup. And I've had some people go, well, I've got an external hard drive and it's plugged into my computer. Therefore, I've got a backup. No. If the ransomware hits your machine, the first thing it's going to do is jump onto your backup, your host. I've had other people say, well, you know, we were running with Dropbox and we had a couple of different companies that were completely shut down because one person clicked on a link, the ransomware went through their machines, and then it went to their Dropbox. Everybody else on the network was sharing files with that Dropbox, and the files in Dropbox got encrypted, the files in each machine got encrypted. It just spread like wildfire. So what type of backup should you have? Should be an incremental backup, and your data should be in at least 3 different places. So you should have a local backup that's running on something like a NAS drive that's not directly plugged in, and there should be multiple versions. In addition to that, you should also have an off-site backup, which means that it's running in the cloud and it should be incremental. So things like Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive are not backups, they're file synchronization. If you're using those programs, you have to have an additional program, Carbonite, CrashPlan Pro, or Acronis. The advantage with Acronis is that it also has anti-ransomware and cybersecurity built into the backups that are running. So again, never rely on one backup. You always got to have your data in at least 2 or 3 different places, and they've got to have revisions so that you can go back to an earlier point in time. Then number 10, staying current. And everybody hates doing Windows updates, keeping your QuickBooks up to date, keeping your antivirus up to date, keeping every single program that you run on your computer should be up to date, because things like Adobe can be compromised. And if they're compromised, you're going to be infected. So all of the Microsoft, Adobe, QuickBooks, all of those people are always trying to work in the background to patch any loopholes from people from being compromised. So if you don't apply your security updates, you don't keep your software up to date, you don't keep your operating system up to date, you are going to be vulnerable. It's a pain in the butt to keep it up, but believe me, it's more of an issue, more of a hassle once you get infected. Now, when it comes to financial transactions, every financial transaction that you do should be verified by phone. ACH and wire transfers, fraud are on the increase. We've had a couple of companies come into us, and sometimes what the bad guys do is they're not doing anything malicious at that point. They had access to either your email or your customer's email or your supplier's email, and they're just sitting in the background watching the emails. Company that approached us last week said, is there anything that can be done? And pretty much they're out of luck. What had happened? Company had said, here's my new wire transfer details. They'd been dealing with this company for years, but the bad guys intercepted the email. They gave them the new bank account information. They did 2 wire transfers to the new bank account information. By the time the company notified them that they hadn't received the money, they got hold of the FBI, it's gone. Once you do the ACH or the wire transfer, the money's out of your account, it's in the bad guy's account, and they've taken that money and they've hightailed it out of there. So anytime you're going to do a wire transfer, anytime you're going to do an ACH, double check, pick up the phone, physically speak to the people that you're dealing with, and make sure that this is legitimate. Double check, triple check, quadruple check. Do not just simply wire transfer or ACH information. Last year, FBI reported in nearly 12,000 cases with $221 million in losses, and that's stuff that's been reported. A lot of the stuff doesn't even get reported. And then again, with everything, have 2-factor authentication on every transaction. So before you do it, if somebody has compromised your bank account, if they try and wire transfer the information, it should send a text to your cell. Make sure that you have that 2-factor authentication, and you can stop that from leaving your account without your knowledge. And then the last step is really just having website security. Your website is going to be vulnerable, and it can be hacked. And as the number of hack sites increases, your reputation can be affected, and your website can actually get blacklisted. And once your website's blacklisted, that means not only are you going to lose business, but your emails are going to stop working as well. So again, those are the 12 main points. We're now going to open it up for questions. I'm going to stop the share, and what I'd like to do is find out if you've got any questions for Kyle or questions for myself, and we'll do our best to answer any of those questions.
So Rowan, I actually have a question. So
Sure.
With the ACH thing, so I have not looked into it, but I guess there's a way I can go to my bank and have them set up, or probably on my preferences, if there's an ACH transaction or possibly a wire transfer, that I'm notified to approve that first. Is that pretty common?
Correct. And it should send either a call or a text to your cell phone, and you've got to put a special code in to allow that transaction to go through.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And obviously from the insurance side, I guess that's something where people should actually, before they get compromised, they should really do a review with the insurance agent and make sure how much of this is going to be covered if we're going to be impacted by 20,000, 100,000, how much coverage am I going to have?
Yeah, check with your carrier, and usually it's an endorsement they can add with most carriers.
Okay.
So if there's any questions that came through.
So Rebecca was saying, what about Docusign? So with Docusign, as far as I know with Docusign, it's still fairly safe, but again, you've actually got to double check with the person and verify everything over the phone. Christine was saying that she would like to schedule a time for someone to help complete an application for cybersecurity. So Christine, I can sit down with you and go over those IT questions and make sure that you're covered for the cybersecurity. And if you wanted somebody to double check on that cybersecurity insurance, Kyle, I'm sure could answer some of those questions on the cybersecurity insurance side as well.
And the actually something that State Farm does, I'm not sure if this is something that Roland could help with, but they actually test us and our employees. They actually send us emails, and they're fake phishing emails, and they use all different types. So definitely, I would talk to Roland about that, because I've seen my team members go in there, they click on it, they said, yes, this was an exercise, and basically, good job, you reported as phishing, or hey, you clicked on it and you would have been compromised if this was.
Yeah,
so,
and those are some of the things that we do for our managed service clients.
Oh, that's very cool.
Send it out to make sure, okay, are employees clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on?
Yeah, and it's always like an invoice or something like that. So I like that. Yeah, it's right. Well, that they do.
So Margaret was asking. She said, "Thanks for the info. She has an external hard drive that she periodically uses to back up her Outlook and files, but she doesn't have it connected continuously. So the fact that you don't have it connected all the time is a good thing. One of the things that we would recommend is that if you're going to use an external hard drive for backups, is buy an additional hard drive and alternate those backups, just in case. You might say, okay, well, I don't think my machine's been infected. You plug your known good hard drive that doesn't have any infections into your machine, and your machine's infected. And while doing the backup, now you've ended up with your backup's been compromised and your computer's been compromised. So you really want to alternate those backups. So hard drives are pretty inexpensive these days. Just alternate them. If something does go wrong with one, you can go to the other. Now, Mark was saying, I use an access management system which offer SSO. However, many of the 40+ sites I use do not offer SSO and must be set up using SWA, which simply stores the user ID and password and auto inputs them into each site. How safe are these type of access systems using SWA? Mark, I'm going to have to do a little bit of more research into that and figure out if they should be reasonably secure, but I'm going to do some research and then I'll get back to you with that one. Also, with having the threat locker in place, that's just going to help increase the security. And Mark was also saying, what are the various levels of coverage for cyber insurance? Kyle, that's a question for you.
Yeah, so currently at State Farm, our limit is $50,000. That covers legal fees, ransomware, restoration, and then you have identity restoration, which is separate, which is an additional $30,000. So basically, you'd be covered for $80,000. Now there is the errors and omissions insurance. Roland is actually one of my clients, and we actually were able to get him up to $1 million in that case for coverage for something like that. So yeah, you can kind of pick if it's on your business policy, it's very inexpensive. But for a company like Roland, they have a lot of data. They store a lot of data. We need to make sure that's protected. And so it just you can pick various levels, Mark. If you felt like, hey, 80,000 wouldn't be enough in my case. But most of my smaller business owners that don't store a lot of data, but just want to protect from ransomware.
And sometimes it's not only the amount of data, but the hypersensitivity of that. How critical is that data? What,
right.
You know, it could be a small amount of data, but it's worth a lot of money.
Right. Yeah,
William Brothers was saying, will a copy of the PowerPoint presentations be made? Yes, both Kyle's and my presentation will both be made available to everybody, and we will show this again tomorrow, but everybody that's attended today will get a copy of that presentation. Mark also says that he uses box.com Enterprise, and do we recommend a specific cloud backup system for that purpose? So we would recommend using the Acronis in conjunction with the box as a double level of security. If nothing's stored on your hard drive, it's stored in the cloud. We can actually have that backed up independently as well. And then Margaret was saying, for authentication purposes, what is a token? I've seen that option before, but I don't know what it is. So your token is going to come through. It's normally through to your mobile device, and it's just an extra level of authentication that can be put into place. William Brothers was saying, suggestions for dealing with login IDs and passwords. I have a spreadsheet with over 2.5 pages of data, and it's close to being out of control. So there are there's software that you can use that will keep all your login IDs and passwords safe. The only downside to that is that you've now got a situation where if that was to be compromised, they would have access to everything. So you've just got to be really careful. If you're keeping it on a spreadsheet, if that spreadsheet's on your computer, what happens if the bad guys get access to your machine? Well, they've got access to everything. So it's a real pain, but in some instances, going old school on a physical paper notebook sometimes is more secure than keeping it on a spreadsheet if you keep that spreadsheet on your computer. If you put it on a flash drive and store the flash drive in a safe, that's a more secure way of doing it. But if you save it on a spreadsheet and you leave it on your machine and the bad guys get into your machine, wow, they've got the keys to the kingdom, and they're going to be dancing all the way to the bank.
Yeah. I've always worried about those password ones. State Farm actually came up with one they want us to use because it is out of control. I definitely, William, I completely agree with you on that. I had a question actually about phones, actually, Roland. So my iPhone, Android, you know, are you seeing hacks happening that way? You know, in this day and age.
Yeah, so now that smartphones really are small computers, we're actually starting to see people hack cell phones and send specific things, text messages, emails that are going to affect either the Android or the Apple iOS. So you've really got to, again, anything with a link or an attachment, you've got to treat with suspicion, because that's where the bad guys are going to trip you up. You're safe until you click on that link or the attachment.
Now, so I'm getting some random from people I don't know. So yeah.
Good.
So just delete them then.
Bye.
All right. And then Margaret was saying, what about saving passwords on Google? If your passwords are saved on Google, in other words, if you go to Google and your passwords are automatically saved when you don't have to keep typing it in. The downside to that is, again, if the bad guys got access to your Google account or access to your machine, they've got access to everything. If you're not having to type your password in each time you go to a website, especially banking information and things like that, well, the passwords may be saved in Google, but if the bad guys get it, they've got the keys to the kingdom again. So it may be old school, but in some ways, keeping that pen and paper is sometimes a good way to go around things.
Yes, I'm printing.
Printing?
Yes.
Okay, we'll mute that person. All right. So Mark was also saying, if my systems are SAS based, meaning I run no critical software on my machines and then my hard drive is compromised, is it just my PC and hard drives that are at risk? Well, the good thing is, if nothing is on your machines, then you're more protected. But if the way that you get to those programs are through your machine and your machine gets compromised, the bad guys could actually get access to that software as well. So you really want to, even though there's no data being stored on the machine, that's a good thing, but you want to stop the bad guys from getting access to your machine if your machine's got access to those clouded programs.
And from an insurance standpoint, yes, we would cover that if you have the cybersecurity. Actually, I have on our homeowners policies, we also offer identity restoration. And this happened to a client during Hurricane Harvey. He was out of his home, obviously his home flooded. He was receiving a lot of mail, which he thought he had forwarded, but the Texas Workforce Commission was trying to contact him for his unemployment. So someone actually found his Social Security number, filed for unemployment, was collecting unemployment under his Social Security number, and the identity restoration actually took over, did everything from start to finish to from his all that to rest for him. So yeah, it would cover you in that case from an insurance standpoint.
And that was Danielle basically saying, well, if you went old school pen and paper and it got stolen, are you still going to be covered, even though it's kind of like old school cybersecurity?
Yeah.
The fact is that your online security has been compromised, and you're going to be covered.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the paper way is the best.
Great. And Mark was saying he's probably going to rewatch tomorrow. Yes, the link will actually be sent out to everybody that attended with the link to actually watch the presentation, and we will send out those PowerPoints to everybody that attended. All right, so I think we're pretty much wrapping up now. If we don't have any other questions, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. And you can always reach out to myself or Kyle after this if you think of something that you would like that question answered, and we'll do our best to do the research and get back to you. Everybody have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Kyle.